Welcome to the CLS show. Marty Gallagher here tonight with the 75 of Joe Neisius. Runs here at the Midwest Mod at Cedar Lake Speedway and all around the place. It's not just Cedar Lake Speedway all the time, but you're it sounds like you're kind of committed to Cedar Lake Speedway throughout this whole season. You've been there every week so far.
Yeah, we'll be there every week as long as we don't wreck anything too bad or anything. It's closest to home. A lot of history there, so I like being there.
75. You've been running that car since back in short trackers at Raceway Park, way back. We'll go like 2006, 2007, 2008 area.
Yep.
Why number 75?
Well, I basically combined two numbers. My dad worked on two race cars a majority of his life. One was my Uncle Tom's, which was 73X, and the other was my brother's, which was 15. So I took the 7 and the 5, and I made my number.
75. And you have a whole bunch of other family that is now racing, and they're all in Midwest mods at Cedar Lake Speedway / around the area.
B mods of some sort.
Yeah.
I got both my nephews, Cole and Caden, are running them, and my brother, he runs one too, and then my cousin Nick. So sometimes we got a whole heat race to ourselves, it seems like.
Yeah. And your brother being Paul Neisius.
Yep, Paul's my brother.
And Paul Neisius raced back at Cedar Lake Speedway back in the day.
Yep.
But before that, you had family that obviously raced at Cedar Lake Speedway / around the area.
All over, yeah. Basically, it all kind of started with my dad's brother, Tom Neisius. He raced, and then both my mom's brothers, Rick Egersdorf and Steve Egersdorf, they also raced. So I got it coming from both sides.
So when you were a little kid, did you spend more time in the Egersdorf camp or the Neisius camp?
Oh, I was always with my brother's race car wherever they went, because that's where my mom and dad were.
Yeah.
So that's where I would go. But when Uncle Rick was racing or Uncle Slammer was racing, they were racing each other most of the time. I would go up and watch them also. And Uncle Tom was pretty well done racing by the time I was old enough to really pay attention to what was going on.
What was like one of your first dirt racing memories? Or I mean, I'll just say racing memories in general. I'm assuming it's on the dirt though.
You know, it's definitely on the dirt. I mean, Cedar Lake every Saturday when I was, from the time I was 2 years old.
Yeah.
It's a memory that I have been probably given more than I can actually truly remember, because I was about 2 years old. It was my brother's first time in the race car, and he rolled it over his first time ever in it. At Cedar Lake, and I believe the story goes is they came in on a Sunday just to go practice.
Okay.
And then the next week they locked the gates, and nobody could do that after that happened. So that's a memory that has been more given to me than I personally remember, but I do remember the 94 and 95 super stocks that he raced, and he won a lot of races, and if they finished outside the top 3, it was a rough weekend.
I'll say more positive thing as a young kid growing up. So like I grew up Lakeville area, you're Rosemount, so not too far away. I remember going to the Go for 50 in Owatonna when I was a kid, and that's like one of the first times I remember being at a dirt track was at Go for 50. Like you in the stands or you in the pits, was Cedar Lake Speedway for sure, or some other places?
Everywhere I went, generally in the pits. I mean, my dad would drag me along, and we'd go, whether we were helping somebody or just going to watch. You could walk around and look at race cars, and he knew everybody and talk to people. And
right now, so you run in the Midwest Mod, and you've had plenty of years of racing underneath your belt on the dirt and the asphalt side of things. How did family try to keep you away from racing? Was everyone like, did you run the quarter midget? Like you see families now like, hey, we quarter midget here, go-kart here. Or was it like your first racing experience was at this track, or how did it all develop that way?
Well, we never raced any go-karts or anything. When my brother was racing, we didn't really have time, because Mom and Dad were running a trucking company, and we didn't have time to go run go-karts and such things like that. So by the time I got a chance to buy my own race car and stuff, I was probably about 17, 18 years old, and I just did it on my own. Ma wasn't really pushing it, because she knows the lifestyle that racing can create if you're not careful, or the time commitment it requires. So she didn't push it, but she didn't say no. She didn't stop it either. So and now we're pretty well in with both feet, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Well, I think you probably were in both feet back, we'll say 10 years ago. You're running late models throughout the Midwest on the asphalt.
Yep.
In the Big 8 Series, you picked up a win at Hawkeye Downs in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, but you also ran competitively at La Crosse Fairgrounds Speedway and picked up plenty of wins. I think 9 or 10 wins at Elko Speedway over the years.
Something like that. Yeah, I didn't really count them.
And so you started in short trackers at Raceway Park.
Yep.
And obviously that kept the vibe going. What was the experience at Raceway Park? That track does not exist anymore.
Yeah, I sure wish it did. Things were simpler there. They'd started later in the day, and you'd go Sunday and race and go home. It was a good entry level division because it was affordable, but yet you still had to work on actual chassis setup. It wasn't like some of the Hornet classes where they're just you go drive it. It is what it is. You actually had springs and change and stuff like that, so that made it so you had to actually learn how to make a race car go fast.
And then from there, I think that's when you jumped into a Big 8 late model, which would be a limited late model. We call it Big 8 late models on the asphalt side of things. Or did you run any power stocks or middle classes?
I did a sportsman car for 1 year.
Okay.
And then we got into the Big 8 because I wanted to get into stuff that had more adjustability in the suspension and more freedom per se with the rules.
And then you also have a connection with the Mergic family.
Yep.
You've grew, obviously, since you guys were, sounds like you guys were kids, you guys kind of grew up together, right?
Yeah, Steve would race my dad's car at Raceway Park on Wednesday nights when they ran modifieds. And then my brother would race it on dirt on Saturdays. So we would go there, and then Nick was just a little guy, and I've known him ever since, and I've worked for him, and we all get along pretty good, and we help each other out.
So literally you would take an asphalt car, and that's what I remember being a kid watching that asphalt car on Wednesday nights at Raceway Park, and that was
a dirt
an
car.
Asphalt car.
It was a dirt car. Yeah.
That's quite the, yeah.
Yep.
So we fast forward to obviously a little bit far forward. You run that Big 8 series, spend some time at Elko, spend some time traveling around the Midwest. How did that experiences go? Obviously you got a family too going on, right?
Yep. Yeah. I mean, as the kids are young and stuff, it makes it hard to get out there and do that stuff, and the time commitments change to what your priorities go to. So you just keep working on it and do the best you can, and it gets to a point where you just can't keep up with it, so you got to try something different.
And then you being friends with Nick Mergic, which Nick Mergic has joined the dirt side of things this last year or two, and you helped him crew in traveling with that series with the Arca Midwest Tour and won some pretty big races.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, you go along with them and you learn a lot from them, and then you can apply it to your own stuff. So that's pretty beneficial to a guy who I don't have a lot of money to spend, so I have to try and get it quicker, per se. And I can't buy the setups from people, so I would learn from Nick, and we'd work together on his car and my car, and we'd all reap the benefits, per se.
Asphalt side of things, still, we'll go Big 8 late models. What was one of the funnest tracks you got to race at?
Well, when I won my first time at Hawkeye, so I got to say Hawkeye is probably one of my favorites. Lacrosse was a lot of fun down there. Every time I went, I got a little better and learned a little more about how to drive that place. There's a lot of character, and that's what makes it fun.
And a lot of people in the Elko Speedway family always say that racing at Elko Speedway makes you a better driver elsewhere. Do you agree with that, or not necessarily?
I think it can, and part of that is because they have two grooves of racing, so you don't have to commit to one way to pass a guy. If your car is good, you can get by him on the top or the bottom, where some of the tracks get kind of one groove. So in Elko's, so as symmetrical as it is, or as close to symmetrical as that track is, it's very round, so it makes it kind of difficult in how the car works.
And then now we go ahead to dirt car racing.
Yep.
Your family's been a part of it in the past.
Yep.
What was one of the bigger decisions why you're like, hey, I'm going to take my family, this is what we're going to do?
Well, it's family time. In that dirt world, the kids get to come right with you, help you on the car, be involved right from the start. And with my boys, that's extremely important to them and me, because if they can come along and enjoy it and have more fun, I get to have more fun. And they can come right along with. We don't have to leave at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We can leave at 3:30, 4 o'clock and still make it in time to get there. So, when he plays football in the fall, got a football game in the morning, we still can go to the racetrack. We're not missing anything. So,
and that's what on the asphalt side of things, it is kind of funny. It's like we get like 3 hours of practice, and then come the nighttime, you only end up running like 50 laps or 75 laps.
Yeah.
You've probably ran more laps during the daytime in practice. And
and
the dirt side of things.
And the dirt side, you just go race, and that's the best part. Is the ground is the great equalizer. Everybody's on that same track. That's going to be different this week than it was last week. So,
was your thought always just that's going to hop in a Midwest mod? Did you think of a street stock or power stock or super stock? Like,
I went with the modified. I mean, a lot of history in the modifieds of some sort at Cedar Lake and around, but just for the affordability and the fact that they race some form of a B mod, whether it's a Midwest mod or USRA or whatever, at every track within 3 hours of here. So you can take your race car and run anywhere you want.
and I think that's totally agree. Like, that's one best thing about Midwest
Right.
mods. You can just, like you said, run anywhere you want within 3 hours of here.
Right.
Fast forward, what's one of the best nights you've had so far in the Midwest mods?
Oh, it'd have to be last year at the Legendary 100. I won the Friday night prelim feature, and then I ran third to David Swearingen and Vandekamp on Saturday, and those guys are no slouches. They know what they're doing, and to even stay within eyesight of them when they're on the same racetrack, I was pretty proud of that. So yeah, that had to be it.
Dirt wise, do you prefer what, dry slick, like an old asphalt track, or rip it around the top when it's
I don't
still
know if I
slick,
have-
like, or do you have a
I
preference?
don't know if I have a preference yet because I haven't done this enough to have a preference. I guess I like when there's grip in the track because it's easier, but I also like when you have some character and stuff so you can find a different groove where no one else is, because it's the only way you can really pass people is to be where they're not. If you follow a guy in his bumper, you're never going to get by him.
And reverse back to that Big 8 Series race that you won at Hawkeye Downs. That's
Yep.
Cedar Rapids, Iowa. That's a big half mile, and you competed
Yep.
against some of the best late model drivers in the country, and you beat them that night. Have you been to a bigger track on the dirt side?
No.
Since, like, you haven't ran. That's gonna say,
Cedar
it's-
Lake and Ogilvy, they're about the same size. That's
Yeah.
about it. Yeah.
I was gonna say, because obviously lacrosse too, running some of
Yeah.
those big high speed tracks in a late model.
Yep.
Can you correlate anything from both cars, or not at all?
Not really.
I mean,
The speed is different. It's a different kind of speed. When things happen, how they happen, where they happen. You start in the middle of a pack in a dirt race, it's different. You know, things are going, they're moving and sliding, and you just kind of got to be more on your toes. It's a different kind of speed.
You shared a story about your family earlier about the bad accident that you don't quite remember, but you were there for. Have you had any bad moments on the dirt that you're like, oh man, that hurt?
No, I didn't really have anything where I got hurt or anything. You know, I've made my share of mistakes in the last 2.5, 3 years here where I just goofed up and didn't do any good. You know, I even did it a couple weeks ago this year. I hit the front stretch wall and bent a bunch of stuff up. It didn't hurt nothing, other than my pride.
Again, thanks for joining the CLS show. Make sure you like and subscribe on YouTube. And again, Joe, thanks for joining us tonight. Joe Neisius, driver from Rosemount, number 75 at Cedar Lake Speedway in the Midwest Mods. A couple weeks ago, we had the $5,000 to win. How'd that night go?
You know, I was really, really happy with my heat race. I passed 6 cars, got up to 5th, and then I didn't quite understand how their passing points were going to work. I think it included your finishing position points and your passing points. And so I was like 0.8 of a point shy of making it in the show. And I thought after I passed 6 cars, I was a lock to get in, you know.
Yeah.
And so I was getting ready for the feature, and then I realized I had to go in the last chance, and I didn't run as good a race as I needed to as far as where I was on the track. I needed to do better about figuring out where to be, and I ended up not making it, but that's a live and learn deal.
And I believe there was 65
65 or 6 cars there,
65 cars
and
that
all
night.
good, a lot of
So
good cars.
That's, yeah. And Jason Vandekamp came up with the win, which was probably his 67th win,
A
or
lot of them,
90th
yeah.
win, or whatever of the Midwest mods.
Yeah.
There's a number we have out there, but he's won a lot of them out
Yeah.
there. Go back to family stuff. When you were a kid, you were a driver instructor at some point in time?
Yeah, I think I was about 15 years old, and at the school I'm at, they paid you to work with the kids on a closed course to help them figure out how to drive, and you'd ride with them and tell them, you know, how to wait at a stop sign, not run into each other and stuff like that.
And this was at Dakota County Tech or
Rosemount High School.
Rosemount High School. And then I think some family was like,
Yeah,
oh my gosh.
we were at a party, a family party, kind of a racer party, really. And Steve Larson's good friend with my Uncle Slammer, and he I don't know how they told him. He found out I was a driving instructor, and he looked right at me and says, "Holy cow, this world is in trouble, because I can't believe a Neisius Egersdorf is teaching driver's ed." So
all the drivers in Rosemount must be horrible drivers and drive very fast.
well, they got it under control though.
That's true.
No bumpers.
No bumpers.
None left. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun that the whole family, that both sides, like obviously they became family probably because they grew up at Cedar Lake Speedway, right? I mean,
Yeah.
they met as young kids in the pits. And have you heard stories from like that connection from way back in the day?
Yeah, well, it all started. My mom's side started with my grandpa. He helped out Perry Giles and those guys racing way, way long ago, and then it snowballed into all my two uncles on my mom's side racing, and then my uncle Tom, which would be my dad's younger brother, he was racing, and those Rick and Tom both raced modifieds against each other a lot, and they would swap wins week to week frequently. So, I mean, that was well before my time. I mean, the wing modifieds were already done by the time I started going to the track, but I still have some old VHS of their races, and they were swapping the lead, and they were competitors back then. I mean,
That's awesome. Do you know of any other stories besides, obviously you just told one, but like of fun, like they were brawling with each other, they had a great weekend, or traveled and ran together to a race down south or race up north?
I know there's stories, but I don't necessarily remember them well enough to tell them
Yeah.
accurately, so I can't really get into that. I don't know enough.
Your older brother, Paul,
Yep.
has obviously been a very good help for all the Neisius family
Mm-hmm.
racing. How's it been helping, like, because he's your brother, you want to beat him at times when you've raced against him. Like, how is it racing against an older brother?
You're always competitive with each other, but at the same time, not to the point where you're going to like wreck each other or anything silly like that. You want to beat him, but if you're not going to win, I'd rather it be him, and I'm sure he feels the same way. So you just work hard and you work together and you learn from each other, and that makes everybody better.
Yeah. And then now you get to race against your nephews.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
And they're young. I mean, some of them have just been started. I mean,
young
young-ish.
in racing.
Yes.
They're young. Yeah. They're doing a pretty good job. They got a good program going there. They've been racing Deer Creek a lot. They come up to Cedar Lake for some specials and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So Deer Creek's closer to their house, so that's why they go down there. So
Yeah.
it kind of works out that
Do
way.
you guys try to share notes as much as you can, or you guys, because it's different tracks, run different programs?
There's several weeks, it's not every week, but a lot of weeks where I'll call my brother and we'll talk about, this is what I experienced, what do you think? And we'll go back and forth on how we think it works and what we think we need to try to fix it.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that,
We look like your family. Like, you're obviously, we talk about racing stuff, but you're a dad and you're married. Like, you got a lot of stuff besides just race car stuff. Like, how does your week look? Like, you need to work on your car, you have your job, you have your kids running around.
Well,
Like,
yeah, families usually takes priority, and it should. That's being said, a race car takes X amount of time. So most of my race car time ends up being after the kids are in bed for the most part. Maybe one night a week I'll get out there beforehand, but they got sports 2 to 3 nights a week, and I'm not gonna miss that stuff. That's important to me. So I want to, because they're only gonna do that for so many years before they're done. So I try to make sure I get to all that, and then sometimes I get home at 8, 9 o'clock at night, and then I go out in the shop and work on some stuff and get the car ready. And it gets shorted once in a while, but not very much, because you can't short that thing and still be competitive.
and then you work at Mergic Automotive.
Yep.
And you've been there how many years?
15, 18, something like
I was
that.
going to say, the number probably just keeps
Yeah,
on
it
rolling
just-
along.
It all
And
blends together.
obviously, Mergic does racing motors, but they don't just do racing motors. They do a whole bunch of other things. Everyone that I'm around in my circles always think, well, it's Mergic Automotive, that's just racing.
Yeah,
No, it's not.
That's actually a small chunk of what we do. I mean, most of everything we do is just automotive repair. That's where the main money comes in, and has all the equipment to do engine work for customer cars, but then you can build engines on also, and that's a big part of it. But that's we only really have 1, maybe 2 guys that do that, and we got about 4 or 5 guys that do auto repair. So.
And talk about Nick Mergic too. Has he reached out to you and been like, hey, how do I get around this dirt track?
A little bit. He's been talking to the chassis guy that he bought it from more, probably. but yeah, we talk about it every Monday. We're talking about how the weekend went, and I made these mistakes. What mistakes did you make? Because we're so new at this that we know it's going to be a fair amount of mistakes involved. Or if you have a good night, you can say, "I thought I did a good job."
And we got his fiance
whatever.
Cheyenne also.
Yep, she's racing B mods. She's learning a lot when you come from an asphalt Hornet to a rear wheel drive B mod. That's a big adjustment.
Yeah. What rest of the summer? Obviously, I'm not talking racing wise. You guys have any baseball tournaments, hockey stuff? Like, what do you guys?
No, we're not going to do hockey. But baseball's over now. We do all in-house sports right now because they're 9 and 7, so there's no reason to get into traveling all over Carnation for kids that little. So we're just got done with baseball. We're doing soccer now, and football starts up in a week or so here, and then we'll have a dual sports for a couple weeks. But it'll work on, and then wrestling in the winter. He's real heavily involved in the wrestling program. My oldest, he was the state champion for his age group last year. So he works his little tail off at it. So in his hard work pays. So
when you were a kid, did you play many sports growing up?
just baseball. I played in-house baseball. I don't know, till I was about 7th, 8th grade, something like that.
And you Rosemont High School,
Rosemont,
I believe, is where you graduated from. We always ask this question about people that have boys or girls with kids. When are you going to build them the go-kart or quarter midget? Or I've had some fun answers.
I've been telling everybody the same thing. He saw the quarter midgets out at Elko, and at Cedar Lake they have them too, I think, in their arena. And when am I going to race a go-kart? And I looked right at him, I says, probably never, bud. I said, because what I want is I want him to be able to take my race car when I'm coming on a Sunday and say, we got to wash it up, we got to do this, 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 and this. And when that majority of that list gets done by him taking initiative and learning how to work on that race car, he can just get in the seat. At that point, I'll be fine with building them, manufacturing them, and keeping them going for him. And I think kids need to take the initiative to learn how to work on them before they get in and drive them, because then they can appreciate the work it takes to bend it back straight when things get bent, instead of just running it through that hole that's there and somebody will fix it for me. And I think that's extremely important, and I think that's something that needs to be taken to the next generation that is becoming lost in racing a little bit.
I can definitely see that. Again, thanks for joining the CLS show here with Joe Neisius, number 75, Midwest Modified, races at Cedar Lake Speedway. Sponsors, you have a lot of them.
Yeah, I got
a few of them.
I got enough. I always can use more, but we'll take. I got CrossFit Calypso. They've helped me out this year. Spruce Street Knives. That's my cousin. He makes.
There we go.
There's Calypso. Spruce Street Knives helped me out. Merge Automotive. They've always helped me out with just all the little things over the years, and engine help and stuff. My good friend Tom helps me out quite a bit. My R&B Martin Moss LLC. They've been good help. They're friends of mine out in South Dakota. They've been really good help over the years. So it's nice to have. I mean, you couldn't do it without them. I couldn't, anyways. I don't. My funding wouldn't be where it was without those guys.
Chassis wise, what chassis do you run with your Midwest Modified, or do you guys have just redone your own chassis?
It's kind of my own deal.
Okay.
It started life. I took it off I rescued it from the scrap heap, we'll say, about 2 years ago, and then it took me a good year and a half to finish it. It started life, I think the center section in the cage was a B&B. Somebody cut it apart, brand new, never raced it, and started redoing it all. And I didn't like what they did. I didn't like the quality of the craftsmanship. So I cut what they did back off of it. And everything from the cage backwards I did myself, and all the suspension stuff I did myself. Body I built myself. I called one guy asking for some advice, I was talking to him, and I said, well, here's the deal. I don't have a lot of money, but I can weld. So tell me what I can do to make this work better. And then that's kind of how I get back into, what I'm trying to do. And I can't afford to buy one necessarily, but I can build it out of the tubing I have and stuff I have. It's more time than money. In either you have time and no money, or you have money and no time. So it just kind of works out that way.
That's obviously very impressive, but I'm not surprised with your mechanical skills from the past, or from now. Off season, do you guys, when not at the racetrack, what do you do for fun? And I think you're a pretty good fisher, hunter.
I go hunting every other weekend from October till January 1st, basically. And the boys go with quite a bit. they're getting old enough now where they're really starting to have fun with it. So that takes up a lot of time in the fall, but it's
You
a
guys
good time.
close, or do you guys go north?
Dakotas,
west,
most of the time
Dakotas?
North and South Dakota.
Okay. Do you guys just friends from up there, or family, or just find farmers' lands?
There's some friends and family up there. I got a buddy of mine. His dad lives up there, and we've been hunting on his land. And we know everybody. We've been doing it for 24 years now, so we know a lot of people, and good friends. They all help us out and let us have some fun.
That's awesome. Racing wise, what's your kind of goals for the rest of the year?
Oh, I'd say to be more consistent would probably be my first goal. Try and figure out. You try and watch the race before you, and I did this last week. I watched the 2 races before me, and I kind of made my mind up where I was going to run my feature on the top, and that was wrong. I should have been a little more adventurous on. Once it wasn't working as good, I stuck to it, and I should have tried the bottom and got a little better. I need to get better about hunting around, and just keep it clean and not wrecking stuff. The more you wreck, the less you get to work on what matters.
Yeah. Thanks again, Joe. Appreciate it. CLS show, Marty Gallagher tonight. Thanks, Joe Neisius, number 75, Midwest Modified from Cedar Lake Speedway and driver from Rosemount.